Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Happy Life with Maria podcast. Today, we have an amazing guest, Dr. Diana Londono, who is a surgeon of urology, and she is an amazing medical professional who also is open minded to spiritual connection. So, today is going to be very interesting. So, welcome, Dr. Diana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. This is really things that I just love, love, love to really talk about, but also really, do and act and not just talk the talk, but really walk the walk because as we'll go into, it really changes your life, it changes your health or your illness, when you understand this connection and how powerful it is. So thank you for having me and for having this beautiful discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so why don't we start with a little bit about the background, like what made you get into the medical field and then how you got into the spirituality as well.
Yeah, I mean, for medicine, it was not something that, I was 5 years old and said, "I wanna be a physician." It really was not anything like that, and I just really thought I was gonna go mostly into politics when I went into
Oh,
college, which is kinda interesting because, medicine is all politics, so I guess I'm in the perfect field. But, it really was, my parents were separated. My dad lived in Mexico and my mom and us lived in the States, and I used to, go back and forth and see him, in the summers and things like that, and one of the summers I went back to see him, he really changed from this really, vibrant and healthy and strong and, very vain and proud, and, he had this olive skin and blue eyes, which is rare for, people in Mexico, so he really stands out, and, he had this really beautiful sort of energy and persona, and, I saw him when he went to pick me up, and he came in a wheelchair, really
oh,
debilitated, really thin, in diapers, completely different from what I had seen, the time prior. So it really wasn't talked about openly like what it was. And, he just sort of said, "Oh, it's a pinched nerve." And we would go to these like healing people and, they like move his spine and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's important to go to what we call complementary in the United States, alternative medicine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also have to do the other things because it's not one or the other. But we can get into that later. But anyway, it wasn't discussed. I didn't really know what it was until later I pieced together that really was like metastatic prostate cancer that went to the spine and caused paralysis. So, and then he died about 3 months
wow.
later, my birthday, actually, on my 21st birthday. So,
Wow. Sorry to hear.
but yeah, it's okay. But that experience really taught me that despite our illness, despite the fact we're like in diapers and like we're having our food brought to us and all these things, people still care about their dignity, about like their cologne, about like their hair being combed, about like being
Mhm.
shaven, all this really important stuff that if you are in a hospital, he was at home, but if you're in a hospital especially, that kinda gets stripped away from you. That, you're in these ugly gowns with half of your behind showing, you feel really vulnerable and, you don't have like your armor that you normally kinda have every day, or what makes you feel yourself because everything's stripped down to like the bare nakedness, really. And that is
Wow.
very vulnerable. And then also you don't know what's going on. You're gonna have procedures all the time, perhaps. They're painful, they're uncomfortable, you don't have the information. It's a really vulnerable and a really challenging place to be in, and it really made me think about at that time about dignity, dignity in health, dignity in illness, and I don't know, that really kinda planted the seed of really wanting to explore what medicine was, and I went back and I started volunteering at a hospital, and I then just started the process to go into medicine at that time. So, it was sort of from that, and, I really went into medicine to really, be conscious about, like, the human connection, be conscious that what matters is the people in front of you, and it's not all about the accolades and how great of a surgeon you can be in research, and, that's very important, and there's amazing people that really do that, and they dedicate their lives to that, and I appreciate that. But for me, it really wasn't about that, it really was about humans, about connection, about presence and like listening, and really the power of presence and healing. Even though I didn't have those words, I didn't understand what it was, but that's really what drove me, unconsciously, subconsciously to do that. And that really is what, brings me purpose and joy when I see patients.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that because that was like a whole journey. Yeah, I think you definitely makes sense with that dignity part that you mentioned. I definitely agree with that for sure. People definitely want to have control of their own kind of body and they want to be able to do things themselves. And it is a very important part of, even when they're older, of course, it's very important to have that independence. I definitely think that's huge. So that's amazing that you chose to be in that medical field and actually are in surgeries, right? You do surgeries and things like that. What I also wanted to hear about was as you were doing all these surgeries, I remember you mentioned that sometimes you would notice that some of the surgeries are actually unnecessary. There are other ways that you can also, help the patient. That you mentioned that you love to talk to them. And how do you normally address certain things that may not need surgery?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, it really depends. I'm not saying for urology there are unnecessary. I think in many fields, there's many things that could be unnecessary, especially I think, and they're going to hate me, but like, back surgeries. There's so much, back pain. And then we do all these scans and we see that in these scans, there's a protruding disc or there's narrowing, there's this and that. And then so we go after that and do surgery. And the reality is that, if we didn't scan all these people, we would find that many people have the same thing, the same protruding disc, and they
Mhm,
never have pain. So it's not the disc that's
mhm.
causing pain. It's just there's pain, and then we find this, and we try to attribute it to that and do all the surgery, which many, many times it doesn't work. It doesn't fix the pain. It doesn't fix the issues because it's not actually a structural anatomical thing. It's much deeper than that. And these are not things that we are taught as physicians. We're taught that, find all these constellation of symptoms, you're going to come to a diagnosis, and then we're going to treat. And treat is going to really usually be, a medicine or a surgery or a procedure. But there's so much more to that, and also, when we find something anatomical, it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the reason of what most people are coming for, which is pain in many instances. So there's so much more to that. I mean, personally, I'm not ever going to operate on many things. One, things I don't believe in. Two, people that don't trust me. So there's many of my colleagues that they'll just operate on anybody and just do it because of whatever. But if somebody doesn't trust me, I will never operate on them and I will refer them to somebody else. And if I don't believe in the surgery, I mean, I'm not gonna do it. I mean, there's many things that, of course, if it's life-threatening, you have to do it, it just has to get done. But there's many things that, I don't think are indicated. I don't think is gonna help people. And I'm not that person that's gonna do it just because I can. There's many things we can do. It doesn't mean we should do them.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with that. And I want to share a quick story. I must have shared it with you before about the back. So when I was like in my 20s, I actually got a very bad back. I had to wear like a brace. It was like all this pain with these lower discs, and the doctors were telling me all these things. And I was like, I'm too young for this. And then my coworker suggested I read this book by Dr. Sarno, who used to be a back surgeon, and he would do all these surgeries for all these discs. And then he would see that the patients would come back with the exact same issue again, the exact same issue again. And he started researching and realized that a lot of the issues are really not physical. Like you were saying, they're on the mental level, like it's the stress in their life, it's their trapped emotions. I think you mentioned one time where people don't address something that was bothering them and then it manifests in the physical level. So he started recommending to patients to address the emotional issues first before they go to the physical surgeries. And I read that book and then I started looking at myself. I was like, wait a minute, is it really the disc issues that I can't move? I couldn't like move at all. I was like a zombie. And then I asked myself, is there a stress level that is causing this? And I started kind of going back to the last few months, what happened the last 6 months, and I addressed this, I addressed that, addressed that. And then the pain little by little went away. And like in a month, it was all back to normal without going to any chiropractor, without doing anything except for addressing the stress. And that was like my first, I think, introduction to the mind body connection, how we really have the ability to affect the physical if we address the medical, the mindset. So I think that was like a huge eye opening for me. So I definitely agree when you say specifically for the back, how a lot of it is actually not physical.
Yeah, that's a beautiful example. It's so powerful, and I'm glad that you shared it today and probably before, because hopefully people can realize that there's so much more to like our physical things that manifest. And we really, if you believe in energy, which Einstein said we're all energy anyway, we have to realize we're energetic beings, in this physical body, but we're energy. And if you look at somebody when they're alive, when they're dead, the difference is like their energy sort of stops, right? Like, what is that energy? Their EKG, that hard test, is going to show a flat line. There's no more energy running through your body. That
Mm.
EEG, that's how you determine, brain death. Like, it has no more of those brain waves. Their electrical currents are happening. So we are electric, electromagnetic really beings. So we need to understand that things start first, yes, in the mind. The mind is a thought. It's an electric current. You can't, really kind of touch it, right? It's an electric thing. And our heart is the other part. That is the magnetic field, just like the earth has an electromagnetic field in it. And if, I mean, we kind of have to believe in that, just like we believe in gravity and the solar planets and all these things. So we have it just like the earth. And when we realize that things may start in the mind, which is electric, and it's going to then present and manifest in the physical. You're going to have those headaches. You're going to have the reflux. You're going to have that gastritis, that pain. You're going to have the back pain. You're going to have the overactive, frequent bladder, symptoms. You have to go all the time. And you become my patient as a urologist, and you're going to have all this autoimmune disease. You're going to have at some point cancer too. Why? Because you lower your immune system from this chronic worry and stress, hormones that bathe every single cell of your body. It lowers your immunity. That's why when you're stressed, you get, like cold sores. When you're stressed, you get a cold. This is because your immunity is way down, and then physically it manifests. So we have to truly understand, even if you're not there yet, how powerful our mind is going to affect our body. Because again, if you ever had a cold sore, you will see when is it happening. There's a stress, there's a change in temperature, there's a stressor that is happening, and then it manifests. So, you know, our mind is so powerful, and I love doing this exercise when I do, talks or seminars, really talking about imagining, have them close their eyes, and like we breathe, and I have them imagine this lemon, and we really, cut it and we bite into it. And when they do that in this, couple minute exercise, you start like salivating just from the thought of this lemon that you're looking, smelling, and touching. And it's not real, but it's real in your mind. So we then understand that just by imagining a lemon and biting into it, our body has physical changes. So when you do that all day with every single thought, whether stress, worry, gratitude, hope, it's going to affect our body. So we need to understand how powerful we truly are, and like use that as an amazing tool to tap into.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. Yes, the example you mentioned about the cold sores, I have the exact same situation. Every time I go to my dentist, oh my God, I have this cold sore. He would always ask me, he's like, what is the stress that's in your life? Because it is not a physical thing. He would always like remind me, like, stop stressing. He would always be like, watch what you are allowing, what thoughts you are allowing, because that's going to cause the physical. And then again, as soon as I would address that, it would just magically disappear. I wouldn't have to do any medication. Yeah, my doctor would always say the same thing that you're saying, which is, it's unfortunately like a lot of people don't know it because, like you said, it's not taught in medical school. It's not publicly well known. I mean, a lot of people are opening up to it now, but the mainstream, I think, medical field is not there yet. But it's getting there. But I think it's amazing to kind of know that you have control over, your issues more than you realize. You don't always have to assume just because something happened that the only way is, I mean, obviously, there's different cases, but I would say, yeah, I think it's definitely super important to know, what is the mind, what is it that we are saying. I think even we were talking before, the way that you speak to yourself, like how are you speaking to yourself, like talk about how that affects a person.
Yeah, I mean, your self talk is so important. First of all, because however you speak to other people is really how you speak to yourself. So whatever's inside you, it spills over. And if you're full of anger, you're gonna be full of anger to other people. You're gonna be, berating them and being mean. But if you're full of like love, self-love, compassion, tenderness to yourself, you're gonna be the same to others. So whatever, we sort of again spill out is really within us. But our words truly carry a lot of power, and they have a frequency just like a musical note. A note when you play in the piano has a different frequency. I mean, it has a different sound, and that frequency is different whether it's a low note or a high note. But so do our words. Even you just saying the word I hate you and just sort of feeling your body like that hate, or like, oh my god, I love you, like you would just feel different, and the same thing when you would listen to a song that is sort of dark and like heavy. How do you feel? Or like something that like pumps you up and you're like in the gym running, like you feel very different. So music, words have a frequency and have power. So, there's a beautiful work in a book called The Hidden Messages in Water that shows with Dr. Muta, he photographed this water as it was freezing, and they exposed it to different words, different frequencies, even different music, and how it crystallized as it was exposed to these different things and words was very different. It was either chaotic and unstructured, or it was this beautiful, ice crystal that just was organized and beautiful when it was exposed to love and gratitude and different words that had a different, vibration, versus when it was like I hate you, or like heavy music like metal. It was very different. So if we see that in these experiments and we realize we're about 60 to 7% water, how do you think that's going to affect us, and how our like even cell, their DNA is going to change with those words? Because what happens with these words, what happens with these thoughts that we have and the way we talk to ourselves, it actually changes literally our DNA. Genes will be suppressed or expressed, to heal or to hurt us, depending on what our internal state is. It just has been shown in studies that, people can meditate for a week, people can tap into gratitude for a week, and then they check your blood test and your like your expression of genes, and they're very, very different. This is not like some pseudoscience. This real science that shows that. So when we see the changes, even in a short time, then we start to understand like, well, what happens when this is going on for months and months and months, when I hold on to anger, to resentment, to fear, it is changing our body, and you're going to feel very different with one versus the other.
Wow, that is so interesting. I love the example you share because I'm assuming you're saying that if they do more meditation positivity, the effect is more on the positive way. And then if they do more, the anger and all that, the genes are affected in a negative way. Yeah, I definitely agree with that because a lot of the times, like I would notice, like for me, like I'm very conscious about what music I listen to, what TV show I put on, the words I say to me, the words that people say around me, because the same thing, it's very, very important the energy you surround yourself with, which includes the words you speak to yourself, the words others speak to you, the TV, the music. And I noticed when I consciously would choose, positive music, positive TV shows, uplifting messages, it like piles on. It like it becomes like an effect, that one thing on top of the other, and it takes you to the positive trajectory, and they just kind of get on that wave. And then if you allow like a lot of negativity, like my friend was actually telling me this week that a lot of people would use her to dump their negativity, like to complain about things to her, and she said she started to feel sick. I was like, yes, of course, if you're allowing so much negative words to be dumped on you, it will definitely affect the physical body, will feel those emotions, like you were saying, that frequency. The body is like a sponge, it will absorb what you feed it. So I think it definitely is very important to be very mindful what you're feeding, the energy you're feeding, whether it's speaking or listening to music or what your information you're speaking about, everything.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I mean, there's a lot of research behind that. Like, if you ever have read a book by Vanessa Van Edwards called Cues, it's about communication. But one of the really beautiful parts it talks about is, which has been researched, is that if you walk into a room and you sit next to somebody in a cubicle or anywhere, really, a coffee shop, and you're in close proximity to them, okay, their mood is going to become your mood in about 5 minutes. So it is
Wow.
affect how, so we're talking about energy again. We're going back to this electromagnetic field that affects us, and we all know that. We walk into a room and we feel like, ooh, like the tension, we feel it, or we feel so happy and so excited, light and different, when somebody in there is happy and joyful, and it really makes a big difference. And they don't even have to say any words, you just feel like that tension or that, joy. So energy is real. We really cannot pretend it's not. And to live in a world that we think that is not, it's one way, but we lose a lot of richness and a lot of potential in what can really help us or hurt us when we understand the power of energy. When we understand how, just like we get dirty, like if we're out in the sand, when to wash off that sand, we can get dirty from the energy getting piled up on us. Like your friend felt like heavy and started to get sick. And so there are many ways to learn to, one, protect your energy, to clean your energy, and to re-energize, because we can't deplete ourselves of energy. Just like if you don't eat food, you're gonna feel tired and weak and not have energy, because that is energy, the food. The same thing happens to just our energy field. And so we need to understand, how to do all these things. And then you just actually feel much better because you are protecting yourself. You're putting boundaries. You say no to the people that are draining you. These like energy vampires that I call, they gotta like stay away. And you really, really protect your energy, and you build like your circle, your community of those
Mhm.
people that are going to raise you. Because I mean, there's a law of thermodynamics if we want to get nerdy, but like, it doesn't go from low to high, energy goes from high to low. So if you're around people that are lower, depressed, um, victim, mindset, it's going to go like this, and your energy is going to get sucked out. So that's why you feel depleted, because it goes from high to
Oh,
low, not from low to high. So understand that these are like scientific concepts. They're laws of science and of
oh,
physics.
wow.
And so when you understand that, then you're like, oh, okay, well, like now I have some awareness. What am I going to do with this awareness?
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't even realize that the scientifically, it definitely the energy like the high to low.
Mhm.
That's so true. That's how quickly it kind of like can absorb you. Do you want to give us like a little bit of an example of things that people can do to protect their energy? Like if somebody is speaking negatively around them, like the certain items that you just
Yeah,
mentioned.
I
You
mean, you
want to
definitely like that's where
elaborate?
you learn to put boundaries. You learn to say like, I don't appreciate what you're saying, or I don't like the way you're speaking, or I'm not going to tolerate that, and you follow through. It's not just a threat, like, or like the next time you speak to me that way, I'm going to leave, and then you leave. Or if you cannot remove yourself, if you cannot stop their behavior, which we can't control the people, then you choose to remove yourself from the situation. You decide to like leave that party, leave that a dinner, you don't want to be there, not go there again, for another dinner with people that can drain you. So we can't change others, we cannot, but we can change how we react and what we do. So again, if you are invited to places where people are like not your people, or you feel depleted, why are you going there? Like, you have that choice to say no, but people are afraid to say no. They are people pleasers. What will people think? Or my aunt, or like, it doesn't matter. I mean, to me, it's like, I don't care who it is. If these people are not helping me, are not helping me feel better and, like not drained, like, I'm not going to be there. I don't care who you are. And I know it sounds very harsh, but it really is about protecting your energy. Then the other thing you can do is, especially in fields where you work with a lot of people, anything like sales or anything in healthcare, medicine, where you see so many personalities, so many energy types, those affect us as much as we can. In medicine, we have these little alcohol stations. You like clean your hands and go in. That
Uh,
actually is not just for germs and viruses and everything else. It's a great way to clean energy, by just cleaning with alcohol. Alcohol will dissolve kind of negative energy. You can all actually clap too. I mean, if you've been to a church ever, if you've been to a temple, this gong, this church bell, it's not just for show to call people in. It actually breaks energy. It breaks negative energy. So clapping or going like this can kind of get rid of energy if you're having to touch people all the time. salt baths, which the ocean is a big salt bath, which is natural. When you go to the ocean, you feel so much better, calmer. It's not just because you're on vacation, it's because that salt water removes that stress energy. So you can go to the ocean, or if you're not near ocean, you can make your own ocean in your bathtub and get salt and put it in your bathtub and just sit there and relax, honestly, and let that salt pull that negative energy. So these are things that are been known for centuries for so many people. They also go to nature. It's called the Japanese call it the forest bathing. You go to nature and you feel better when you're out there. Why? Well, because there's good energy of the sun, of the wind,
Mm.
of the trees. I mean, you don't have to know about energy, but somehow you feel better. Why? That instead of when you're on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles, you feel a lot different. So, what's the difference? The difference is the energy. So, understanding these basic things, you don't have to get crazy. It's simple, it's free. I mean, you're not spending money, you're not spending $2,000 on a course you don't need. And these things can truly make a big difference of how you feel every day and how you show up every day. And you don't feel depleted and sick and heavy, when you make these like small changes.
No, absolutely. I agree with all those tips you shared because little by little, all these things do add up. Even like I think massage therapists, because they use a lot of hands, they'll just wash their hands with water and soap. And that also, like I said, breaks up the energy, just that stream of water, because the water obviously has its own consciousness, as you mentioned. So that alone is already like breaking up the energy. The goal, I feel like, from what you're saying, is to break up that energy and stop it. And then definitely, obviously, like you said, it would be great to remove yourself so you don't have to be in those situations. But if you are in those situations, certain tools are helpful to know. And it's not something that's so big and unreachable. It's literally like the smallest little things can make huge difference. Like, even if, let's say, for me in my home space, if I'll have like somebody that came over, I mean, usually I'm very picky about who I allow into my house. But if for some reason somebody ends up coming into my home who does not have a very positive energy, that's a very negative, I would open all the windows, right? Let the air in and the oxygen. Already, something as simple as that will change the energy. Or you can even put on a happy song. The sound, like you were saying, the sound of the positive music will break up the energy and change it up. Like every tiny little thing you can do makes a huge difference. I definitely agree with that. Talk to
Yeah,
me
movement
about,
is so key.
yeah.
I love that you brought sorry, like, the
Yeah,
movement is
yeah, go
so
ahead.
key, and the movement, also if you're feeling down, if you're feeling, like, a little depressed or even angry, like, if you put music and move, you are actually raising your vibration, you're raising your energy, and you'll feel different, and, also as a caveat, like, for people that are depressed, you can take your Prozac and whatever antidepressant you want, and I'm not saying don't take it. All I'm saying is you have equal benefit and success with medication than you do with exercise. So if you exercise for 20, 30 minutes a day, you will be having the same effect as a medication. But like, why do people do it? Well, one, because it takes more work. And two, because people don't realize the power of it. But you will feel so much better. You will get out of that rut. You will get rid of that stress, the anger, that worry, that depression when you move your body. So, little baby steps. You don't have to run a marathon tomorrow, but little baby steps, you consistently do it. And I promise that you'll be so, so much better. And I think that a lot of runners sort of also have probably a little baseline depression, and that is their medicine. That is their medicine that they do to run and to move to get out of that rut. So it's very important for a lot of people, and we kind of like don't think about the power of just movement.
Absolutely. I agree 100% because like I think I don't know if I mentioned, but I love to dance. Like my hobby is
Mhm.
dancing. I love salsa dancing. So sometimes in the morning I can choose to spend the first 10 minutes of the day putting on music and dancing. And that already will shift the whole day and it's going to be in a very different zone for the rest of the day because of the way I chose to start the day. And even if we are in like dance class, this is like the number one thing they always tell us that we're not only there for the fun of it, a lot of people benefit from it literally for their mental health, for their physical health. There's a lot more benefits to it than just for fun. It's a lot more than that. It was, it could be with running, it could be whatever it is, any activity that works for you. But I found that, yeah, for me, like dancing definitely is a huge game changer, just for, like you said, like the mind, like even if you were stuck on something and the mindset was like, you are, how we tend to get stuck on one situation we cannot resolve, and we just replay it and replay it and replay it, and that becomes like the circle that keeps replaying in our mind. But if we choose to do something physical, we shift the focus to the physical, whatever it is, whether it's dancing, whether it's tennis playing, I don't care what it is. It stops the loop.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I love it. I love it. My next question was, I have like some little notes written down. Um, what is some of your favorite like spiritual? I guess we kind of talked about it. Like, what are some of your spiritual tools that you love? Like, do you love yoga? Do you like that? Are like we can proactively do instead of like reactively do, like to implement into our daily life.
Yeah, but I think for yoga, people in the West, and I definitely did for 20 years. I started doing the asanas, the movement, what we see as yoga, probably when I was, probably 20 years ago or more, who knows? And I really just saw it as a physical, as a workout. Like I do like power vinyasa, like let's just get a good workout. And that was sort of where I saw it. But, yoga really means, yoke, to unite. So you're
Mm,
uniting, all the aspects, not just a physical, it's uniting with your higher self, with the source, whatever you want to call it. And understanding that it's not just on the mat. It's like what you learn on a mat translates and goes outside the map, because you're learning flexibility, you're learning strength, you're learning balance, you're learning humility. I mean, these are all things that happen on the map, but you actually have to practice off the map. So that 1 hour a day is not just where it stays, it continues, throughout your day and your life. And it's a way of being, it's not something you do for an hour. So, yes, I mean, I do that. I think it's really important to have that hour to breathe, to slow down, to be conscious, to be aware. And that's really what it's about. I mean, you're moving from a what we call sympathetic, fight or flight, to a parasympathetic, that is the rest and digest, by breathing and by moving slowly and consciously, which you also do if you dance. You also do if you run. You are breathing in a rhythm. You are moving in a rhythm. Qigong, whatever you want to do. I mean, they're all doing the same sort of things, get you out of that fight or flight into a rest and digest. And that's important because it shifts our body again down to the cellular level, to the gene expression level, to a place where we can be in a place we can heal, in a place where we can hear, outside of all the noise that is bombarding us. So we can hear our intuition. We can hear whatever you want to call it, God or whatever you believe in, when we are calm and quiet. We cannot hear it in the static and the craziness and the frenzy. So that's what yoga is going to do, but you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you like. But I've done it for so many years, not knowing for a long time really what I was even doing or what it meant or the background behind it. And the other thing is like, meditation or whatever you want to call it, quiet time, time to, just close your eyes, or time to try to again get to a state where you can realize you're just more than this body, and you are not a body. You're not your mind, so you're more than that. So really kind of diving into those deeper questions of who truly am I, other than this like meat suit. Who truly am I? What am I here for? What is my purpose? And these are spiritual questions. What's my purpose? How can I help others? What am I grateful for? So, gratitude is a spiritual practice. Gratitude is another way that shifts you out of fight or flight and gets you into a rest and digest, because you cannot coexist with stress and gratitude. Like it's either one or the other. So, we get to choose, am I going to be in a frenzy, or am I going to be grateful for what I have, grateful for so many things, right? Like from the little to the huge. So if you start a practice daily of gratitude, in the morning, at night, twice a day, whatever you prefer, it's going to start shifting your mindset, your body, your health, just by this simple, free routine you can start. And so, I challenge you to do it. Do it for 21 days. That will rewire your brain to a new pathway. And the more you do something, the more you find evidence of that. If you wake up, like you said, dancing and in a different mood, you're going to see the day in a different light. If you wake up angry, reactive, you're going to see evidence of that all day. All the things that have gone wrong, all the people that are mean, all the world that's fallen apart. You're going to see that all day because your mind's really an efficient computer. It wants to save energy, do the fastest pathway, and whatever you feed it is just going to follow it. So, we actually control our mind. It doesn't control us, but that takes awareness and consciousness. So either we let it just ride like wild and crazy, or we say, nope, I'm going to direct what I want out of the day or out of my life. So these are easy things we can all do. It doesn't take, again, money, time. It takes time, but it takes a conscious effort to schedule it and make it non-negotiable. If you kind of like digital dabble and do that, well, you're gonna get results. But if you really do something consistently and all the time to make it your new habit, you're gonna see huge changes and how you feel, how others see you, how you interact with the world, and the people you attract and the circumstances, opportunities you attract when you're a different, frequency.
Oh my God, absolutely. I definitely agree with what you're saying. Thank you for sharing. I would say yes. It's like you said, even if let's say somebody does not have the 10 minutes to put on a song and dance in the morning, gratitude, I think, is a very underused tool, but it's so powerful. Like if we can choose to spend the first 5, 10 minutes of the day consciously to make a choice to list even 5 things you're grateful for in general, or that happened last week, or that you want to see happen. If we just consciously make the choice to spend 5 minutes in the morning of the day listing out positive things, that already will make that at the forefront of your mind that there is something positive, and that will, again, like we talked about before, change the trajectory of the day. Something that simple. It doesn't require any skill set, doesn't require, even if you have the most busiest life and you have 5 kids running around, taking 5 minutes to list gratitude is something I feel like anybody can do. And it's just like about making that choice to decide to have a happier day. Obviously, things can happen during the day that kind of, can throw you off. But for the general idea of the day, will start off in a very positive way. And like you said, the different ideas flow, the different opportunities flow. You attract different people, you attract different experiences. But if you are in a reactive mode, like you were talking about, I like the fight or flight versus, what is it, rest and
And
digest.
yes. Mhm.
I love that. That's so interesting because, yeah, I agree with that. Because if we are in the stress mode, that would be the fight or flight, right? Because we are like super fast. Everything is like, survival mode, and everything is like, I have to put out this fire, this fire, this fire. Which, of course, yeah, some people can have very busy schedule that kind of create that. But we can choose again to stop at any point during the day and take those 5 minutes for gratitude. And again, it will shift the trajectory of the rest of the day. Or if you do it in the evening, whenever you have those 5 minutes, like it doesn't have to be anything too big. If you don't have 20 minutes to meditate, whatever it is, like small things. I love the gratitude tip. That's, I think, a very powerful tip because it's something anybody can do at any point during the day, and it can
Yeah, and I
change the
wanna also
whole.
give like, I think there's also, some traps in gratitude, so I do wanna also talk about those, and
Okay.
I think the traps of gratitude are the following: 1, that we make it a checklist, like, "Oh, I need 5 things, I need to write them
Mm,
down," but we don't feel it. Like, that's just a mental exercise when you list it, and if you don't tap into the actual feeling, like, "I feel grateful," and, like, you really kinda savor whatever you're listing, there's a very, very different way to approach gratitude because it's not like a checklist. It's not a this is another thing to do. It's a state of being and a state of feeling. And when
mm,
you have a thought, but you pair with a feeling and it comes from the heart,
mm.
it's very, very different. That's where you really tap into like the electromagnetic. Otherwise, you're just like in the mind and the electric, and you're not tapping into your whole huge power. Our heart actually is the most powerful organ that we have. It has like 5,000 times the electric potential that our brain does, and it can be felt and measured like way outside our body. So it's not the mind that is the most powerful, actually, it is the heart. And
Wow.
interesting too, when we are an embryo, like in utero, our heart is the first thing that comes to life, right? Like, it's not the brain that forms first; it is the heart. So it is so powerful. It is really like the life force, truly. When we die or when we are born, like you check the heart rate, like you have a heart rate. You don't check the brain because it's not informed yet. So so important to understand. You got to feel it. It's not a checklist. So don't fall into that trap because otherwise you're just going through motions and you're not actually going to get that much out of it. Two, another trap I think people fall into is, well, you should be grateful. Like this should, would have, like, you know,
Oh,
you should not like accept, let's say, things that are not good for you because you should be grateful because other people have it worse. It's like you should be grateful, like, at least you have this or you have that, or like your husband's good enough, or your job is good enough. People don't have jobs. Yes, that's true, but don't fall into the trap like, oh, let's be grateful because it could be worse, and then accept like crap. So, be grateful, yes, in the moment, but in that gratitude, you still choose better for you. You choose to go for that dream. You choose things that light you up and are better, even while you're grateful. So, gratitude doesn't mean that you accept, in a way, status quo or that you accept good enough. So, there's a little bit of trap in that people don't even maybe realize or don't want to talk about. But just like light and dark, everything has one side or the other. And gratitude can be fantastic, but it also can have sides that you have to be aware of as well.
I love it because the way you're explaining, I love the way you're explaining that gratitude, the best way to practice it is connect to the feeling. That's very different than, mentally listing. That's so powerful. Yeah, if you connect to the feeling of it and you actually like remind your body to feel that positive emotion of the gratitude, that's a very different experience from, I just read a checklist.
Yeah.
That's a
I mean,
whole
like,
different
and, like, we
experience.
all we all probably start that way. I mean, because 'cause we're like, "Oh, yeah, we gotta do this. We gotta do the gratitude." And, like, they can just do this, like, mind exercise, which is good. It's good enough, okay? But it's not to the next level. Like, you really need to, whatever it is, not just gratitude, like, if like, freedom or joy, like, whatever you are wanting in your life now and in the future, in order to tap into that, I mean, like, you're kind of then talking about, like, quantum physics, like, how do you tap into that unlimited potential? But like you have to feel it. Like it's not a mental exercise like, oh, I hope I can get that. Like, no, you gotta feel it. Like, what does it feel like, in your body, in your heart? And that is so much more powerful. So yeah, like just pay attention to that. You can try yourself, like do the checklist, or really sit and simmer and feel and notice a difference.
No, no, there's a huge difference, absolutely. And I love the you're connecting it to the quantum field and to
Mhm.
the heart center because I think, yeah, a lot of people don't realize, but the heart center is way more powerful than the brain. I absolutely agree with that. And the power that we have to change our like the feeling of the day, the experiences around us by connecting to that heart center, like you said, which is through a feeling of it. That's how you connect right to the heart center. You have to like feel something positive, something joyful. And that's kind of like activates the heart center. For me, let's say dancing activates the heart center, right? And then that expands your field, right? It's the emotional field, I guess you could say, the aura field, the quantum field. And that radiates, it's like a radio, right? Frequency that radiates out, and then that becomes the point of attraction, as they call it, right? That becomes what experiences are drawn to you, what people are drawn to you, right? Let's say like you and I are on a positive frequency. That friend of mine that's talking about all these negative people is not going to be able to coexist with us because we're going to be at a different frequency. Literally, all that we're doing different from them is we're consciously choosing what experiences we want to have, what people, what thoughts, what music, what kind of like all these little things that we talked about before. That's the difference. We're consciously making the choice to be on that high frequency, the feeling of it. And then it takes like, every small little step from, the music to the words that we say to the feeling that we choose to feel about the gratitude to all these little things that people kind of don't think are important, but this is how we get to that frequency.
Absolutely. Like the small steps make a huge difference. And I mean, go on a plane and change 1 degree, on the path and see where you end up. You're not going to end up in Miami. You'll end up in LA. So 1 degree change, which is what a small incremental steps in your daily life, add up to, is a huge change, down the road. So the consistency of time and effort, like that, as my teacher always says, like we have to be consistent, small steps every day, consistently. Then you'll see, the big, big changes later. And you have to kind of have this idea of a little bit of delayed, gratitude, delayed, happiness
Gratitude,
that
yeah.
is not going to happen right now. It's going to be later when you put in the time and effort. The question or the issue is most people don't want that, or they're okay with like, well, it is just what it is. I'm okay here. I'm comfortable here. I don't want to put the time and effort because it's painful. It's painful to grow. It's painful to change routines, things, ideas, people. And as you change, likely your circle will change and drop off. Like those friendships that used to be, oh, yeah, yeah, they just drop because they are not either in the same path of growth or they're just in a completely different place that you just don't relate. Again, why don't you relate? Because the energy has shifted and you're in a different frequency, literally. So that's why people fall off, and then people don't want to let go, right? Like we hold on to stuff so much. Oh, I don't want to let go of that friend. Well, if you don't let go, they just become anchors and drag you down. So you decide, like, you let go, you move on, or you realize that we don't own anything in this world. We can't hold on to things. The only thing constant is change. So when we actually go with that flow and realize everything's going to change and we can't hold on, we actually suffer less, instead of like resisting change, not wanting to adapt, not wanting to grow. And we just like status quo, like, in like a swamp of stagnant water.
Yeah, that's interesting. One second, because it reminded me of an example. So I have this friend from like a long, long time ago. We used to connect, we used to hang out and laugh, and then we kind of lost touch. And then we reconnected. We tried to reconnect like 2, 3 years ago, and I couldn't do it because I would notice, because her number one topic was she loves to gossip and talk about all the other people's issues and how this one did this wrong and this one did that wrong. And I could no longer connect to that because I was like, that's what we used to talk about. I didn't remember that. I was like, there's no way I'm going to consciously choose to have a friend sit down and spend an hour talking about all these other people's situations and issues, and did you hear this and did you hear that? There's no way. So I unfortunately had to kind of little by little talk less and less with that person, because there was just no way that that would be something that would be a good idea in my mind. Like I spend my time talking about ideas, talking about, the energy and the positive things that are happening, or what the plan is for the next thing. Like I wouldn't dwell on, what the other person even did. That's not even a topic I would ever want to discuss. Like
Absolutely. Like, yeah, you definitely, there's like a meme says, like, be in a room where people talk about ideas and, other things other than people and gossip. And it's so true. Like, what room do you want to be in? One where people gossip and like bicker and like, nah, 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 or, a place where, again, you're kind of like in a growth mindset. You are looking ahead, you're looking positively, you're looking at the bright side. And it's not about toxic positivity, but it's just like, I think when we are positive or grateful, it's not because there's no challenges. There are plenty of challenges. There's plenty of things that are really, really hard. And I can sit here and like be positive and grateful in the midst of like really a lot of things that are really not good. Uh, but I'm not gonna dwell on that like 99% of my day. Like when it's time to like feel that and be through that and go through that, okay, I will go through it and not push it away and feel that horrible stuff. But the other time, I'm gonna choose to like be in a different space because that's like the other 99% of my day that I want to, have control over. And I want to also experience those feelings. But there's plenty of time in the day that I have the other feelings. And we have to allow both. Again, people always only want to allow the good, the happy, the joyful, but like we have to allow the sadness and the grief and the rage and the anger and the frustration and the overwhelm and the defeat. Like these are all part of the human experience. And I think as a physician and a surgeon, I see a lot of these repressed, dismissed, hidden forbidden emotions,
trapped emotions.
trapped emotions, and that's what causes a lot of the disease. I mean, it really, really does. Like trauma is stored in our hips, is stored in our fascia, and that's why there's many modalities where you can release it, including yoga, but like tension release exercises. There's many, many ways of releasing that trapped energy there, and that's why in yoga, if you do things like pigeons pose and different ones where your hips open, a lot of emotions are going to flood and come out because you are releasing, you're stretching, you're lengthening all that emotion that got stuck there. It's a powerful way to think about animals, dogs, cheetahs, whatever you want. When they fight with each other, they're like going down the street, you're walking your dog, they're like, "Bah, bah, bah," and they bark. They will fight, their adrenaline is rushing, they're growling, and then a second later, you will see that the dogs will shake their body. So they
Mm.
shake their body, they're actually shaking that stress energy, and they move on like nothing ever happened. They're not like depressed and they're not on Prozac because they have let go of these emotions that were traumatic, difficult, and they move on. But as humans, we don't do that. We hold on to that resentment, we hold on to the anger, we don't shake it off, and guess where it stays? In our body. So many times, if I have patients that come in with this frequency to pee, urgency to pee, all this bladder pain, and there's no infection, there's nothing else. And then I start asking them, kind of like how you told me about your back pain, like, well, what happened, 5 months ago when this pain started, or 6 months ago? Was there something in your life, like relationship or business, or something happening that was stressful, that you can tell me about? And they always, almost, always, almost, always will say, "Oh, yeah, da 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 da. Oh, yeah. That's when I started to think about my retirement, and I, don't know what I'm going to do, and I'm worried about the finances." Or, "Yes, I'm going through a divorce, and that sort of started, a few weeks before." Well, guess what? It's related. Your mind and your body are related. So just having that awareness can start the healing process. Yes, I will still likely give you medicines to help you with that frequency until you get the other stuff under control. But sometimes we don't even have to. But if you need it, of course, we'll give that to you. But understand that if I just give you a band aid and I don't address the rest, you're never actually going to get off the medicines. You're never actually going to get better because we never address the root cause of it. And I'm just band-aiding and like, putting a little patch on things. And that's how many people sort of live and want to be. But if you truly want to get to healing or reversing a lot of diseases and problems, it has to start with the mind and the body and the heart and the connection to those emotions.
That is so powerful. I love that you shared that. I love it because it's coming from you, who is a medical professional, who is, dealing with every day. You see the physical ailments, and you do have to do those surgeries, and for you to acknowledge and like kind of realize that before you do all those things, you can actually speak to the patient and ask them what else is going on in your life, and first see if you can address the emotional. And a lot of the times that would like remove half of those issues. That's so powerful, like to hear that it's a possibility, because I actually had a similar situation. I was like in my 20s, like it was college life, so much stress because I was working full time and going to school full time. It was crazy, or part time and full time. And I ended up developing, was it like IBS, the irritable bowel something? Like I had like crazy stomach pain all the time. And I would go to the doctor, and she thankfully was like you, instead of giving me a pill, because I think one doctor was like, "Oh, here's a pill, you have to take it for life." I was like, "No, I don't know if I like that." And this other doctor asked me, she said, "Is there something going on in your life that's causing you stress? Do you want to talk about something?" And I started listing all my school has this requirement and that requirement. And then I like listed all these things. And then little by little, as I was talking about it, it would feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And she was like, "So you should pay attention to the emotions that you're feeling, and little by little you watch this will dissolve on its own." And she's like, "To go try that." And I gave it like a month or two, and it just dissolved on its own without having to take pills for the rest of my life, because like I said, we addressed the root cause of it instead of just like band-aiding it and taking a pill for the rest of your life. Find out what's their true cause of it. So I think that's very powerful that you are spending time with your patients to understand where it's coming from before jumping straight to surgery.
Yeah, the power of realizing like how our, mind, thoughts, emotions is contributing to disease is huge. And also understanding that we also have like innate healing power. What does that mean? That means that there's something called placebo effect, placebo
Mhm.
pills. Placebo pill is basically a sugar pill. If you look at any and every single medication that's out there in the market, whether it's for your cholesterol, your heart, your anything that you can think of, everything has been tested against something called placebo controlled. It means they give you your cholesterol pill and they give you a sugar pill. People don't know what you're getting. And then you see the outcomes of what does your cholesterol do at the certain time? What are the side effects from this sugar pill or this cholesterol pill? And the power of the belief that somebody's taking something to help their cholesterol, even though it has no active component on a medication, pharmaceutical, anything, does show that there is improvement up to like 50 to 80% of the time, you know. But then we say, oh, well, this pill is 20% better than the placebo. So definitely it's going to be FDA approved and everybody has to be on it. But then what about the other 50 to 80% of the people that never truly took the medicine and got better? Their cholesterol got better, their mood got better, their everything that is tested gets better. So the power of the belief that we're going to get better just by believing one, perhaps on this pill, on this treatment, or on the physician. If you believe that the physician has the best interest and the physician believes in the treatment for you, it has been shown in many, many studies. And Dr. Herbert, who was at Harvard, had many, many studies about this showing how people improve. So again, it's not just we can reverse it. It's like just understanding our belief. And the opposite is also true. It's called nocebo instead of placebo, nocebo. If we believe something's going to harm us, believe me, it's going to harm you. So, people have been tested or like children, like, oh, you're allergic to this. And so we put it on, but it's actually something different. But they believe it was the thing that made them allergic. They will have a full blown reaction in their skin. But when, the opposite is done, they don't get that. So how does that happen? It's just the power of our belief, which again is so powerful to say, like, we have as ourselves power to heal or power for disease. And of course, come to us as physicians also to help you. But I don't have power over you. Like, I can guide you, but the power is within you. You have the power to heal. I can just maybe give you some awareness, guide you, give you some options, but it's like you who is the true healer. Your body's going to heal. Even if I cut your skin, guess whose body needs to heal? It's you. So you are healing. I'm just really like the vessel, the instrument to get you there, but it's not me. I'm not doing any of the healing. It's you. So that's really powerful to understand how powerful we truly are as beings, and don't give your power away.
I love that. That is so important. Yes, I think it's the knowing that we can make a choice to find the solution, even for the healing. Let's say, like for me, right? I could have listened to the first doctor who said, "Here's a pill, take the pill for life," or I could have decided, right? I made the decision that I'm going to find another way, and I found the other way because I made a choice, to heal permanently. I didn't want to just take a pill for life. Like, it's like that's not a solution. So because I believe that there is a way to heal permanently, I found it, right? The same thing. If you choose um, to believe, then you will find the answer.
That's same of like people that like live longer than expected. Like, oh, the doctor told me I was going to live for 3 months. And like, how did you live 5 years? Because you had the will and the belief. And the same as when people die. Like, I see people all the time. I know when they're going to die. I have like this interesting gift. Like, I know when people are going to die. But usually also it's because they decide like they're done. So once they decide they're done, like they will die like shortly after because they have decided like it's time. And I'm not talking about like you decide like you're done, you decide it's time, then you'll die. When you decide you're going to live no matter what, that you're going to do it, like that outlives whatever medical thing we have or we don't, or like some like time frame that we give you, which is so arbitrary. Okay, like that's the worst thing anybody can give as a physician, like, oh, this time frame. And I know people want to hold on to that, like how much time, how much 5 year survival. Yeah, that's okay, but, like, it really is about what you are gonna believe, it's gonna happen. Of course, there's guidelines, of course, there's gonna be some, things that most people fall under, but don't underestimate the power of your conviction, of your mind, of your willpower, or of your belief. It's really powerful.
Absolutely. And I want to share like another quick stories. Like as I was speaking to you, all these stories are coming to my mind before we're done. I have one of my grandmothers. So I have like two, of course, both of them by now passed away, but one of them ended up living till 94 years old, and I strongly believe it was because of her willpower, is because she loved life and she was going to stick around as long as she possibly could, even if the doctors would say, this estimate, that estimate, or they'll have like this issue, that was. She had such a strong will to be here and to experience life. I feel like that's what carried her until 94. So I definitely believe that the willpower we have definitely is real, and it can affect us, and it's the choice that we makes the difference between how we choose to experience whatever it is. I feel like, yeah, there's a huge power in our will that we have as a humans. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
As we are approaching the end, I have my final three questions. This is such an amazing chat. I could talk for another 200 hours because this is like exactly what I always wanted to explore more about, the mind body connection, and to actually discuss that with somebody who is in the medical field themselves, to hear your perspective of also acknowledging that it is possible, to also look at holistically. I guess the holistic approach, it sounds like what you are open to, where you look at the mind and body before you make a choice. I wanted to know what would be like if you had the option to share like one or two or maybe three tips for anybody going into like the next 5 years of their life. What would you say like would be general tips for life that you would suggest to somebody?
Yeah, well, I mean, one, like always be a student. We are never experts. Be curious. Have that wonder that children have. They're our biggest teachers. So stay curious, stay always wanting to learn. And never say like, oh, I know all the answers, or like this is the way. Like there's so many ways, and it's the wise people to change their mind with new information. So once we have new information, new awareness, new consciousness, if you want to call it, like, change your mind. That's okay. Otherwise you're gonna be stuck in this rut of like, this is where I like draw the line and put my fit in the sand, and like you'll be stuck. So be open to new possibilities, be open and curious. I mean, I think that's the one of the biggest things. I also think with, if you're kind of like in a spiritual community, like a big
Yes.
marker of that is humility. I mean, there's so much like,
Mhm.
I call them like false prophets, false spiritual people that their ego leads, and like they're just there's a little bit of a fine line between spirituality and like psychopath. Like you can be totally just actually crazy, because it's a fine line, of like what you listen to, what you hear, the voices, the downloads, you know. But a marker of a true spirituality is humility. When somebody doesn't have humility, or in yourself, so check that yourself, have a little like honest radical self check. Humility goes a long way. So I would just always encourage to like lead with humility, and to have discernment for other people's humility or lack of. Because again, in this path, there's a lot of different things coming along. So just have that. And again, thirdly, I would say, also listen to your intuition. Your intuition is that, gut instinct. And our gut actually has like so many nerve endings more than other parts of the body. This is a really powerful place, is your gut, that has nerve endings. This is where you feel your gut instinct. That actually has, well, a lot of things like all your microbiome, which helps you with your mood. That's where the serotonin, happy hormones are made. There's so much important things in the gut. But, you know, the gut instinct is something that you feel in an instant before your logical mind says, should I do that? Should I not? Is this person a good person? Like you feel that in an instant. But we tend to silence it. We tend to not trust it. We tend to say, like, no, I mean, how could that be if like the reality is that I'm seeing this? The reality of the words spoken is like they're saying this. But realize, like, even though words carry a lot of frequency and energy, we can lie with words, but our energy doesn't lie, which is behind the words. So you feel that energy instantly and a gut instinct and intuition, like believe that. It may be years, decades before you kind of piece together like why something was off. And then maybe that's when you'll believe. But like I hope you believe before you even get that evidence. And trust that because that is so powerful. That is really your North Star that guides you. And there's actually nothing unscientific about like trusting your gut because if you trust it and you realize like that was correct, that is scientific evidence that that is a correct path. um, just like you would do an experiment. If you do the experiment and it works, like that's the scientific method. If it fails, then you have to figure out a different route. When you do that with your instinct, like more and more and flex that muscle, you'll actually realize how true, how guided, and how real and important it is in your everyday life. And so I would say those things are really important. And if you follow that, I think your life will be, hopefully better and much richer.
I love that. Yes, I definitely agree. The last tip about the intuition and the gut instinct is so powerful and it's so true. And I love the tip that you shared about practicing it because the more we literally take every day to practice to listen to our own intuition, to listen to our own gut feeling, the more accurate it becomes, the more comfortable it becomes to know, okay, this is the gut feeling saying yes, this is the gut feeling saying no. It's about literally practicing listening to it every day, let's say for the next 30 days until you become more comfortable with it. That's like, I feel like a very strong tool that people can use, like you said, to go from the fight or flight to the rest and digest. Because when you get to rest and digest, that's when, like I said, you listen to that intuition more clearly, more calmly, when the information flows more easily because you're more open, the heart center is more open. One more question I wanted to say, if somebody wanted to, figure out a way to get from the, what is it, the now I'm blanking,
Fight
the
or flight.
different systems, yeah, the fight or flight to the rest of the digest. If you could pick like two or three steps they can do, what would be like your favorite three steps they can take?
Yeah, I think gratitude is huge.
Hmm.
Breathing consciously is huge. I mean, that takes like 2 seconds to just breathe, like when you are about to, you know, lose it, like really breathe into like before you respond. And like one way to like really open the gap, and that's what you're doing, is stretching that window between like, you know, reaction, and action is, it is meditation. It is really stretching that time frame from when you like perceive something get triggered unconsciously in milliseconds, and then you like start screaming or whatever you're going to do. When you have a practice of meditation, what is happening is you're stretching that window a lot longer, so you have more of a consciousness of how you're going to act or react. And it also makes you like truly an observer. Like you are observing yourself, like kind of like in the third person, how are you gonna react? And realize like, you know, like again, you're not your thoughts, you're not your mind, even though you think that's you, but it's not you. You cannot observe your thoughts and be your thoughts. When you realize that paradigm shift, you realize you are actually the observers of all of this and you have control on how. But to stretch that time frame, meditation is actually a great way, which is also scientifically proven to do that. And so those are good ways that you can start. And it just takes practice, it takes commitment, and it takes like spending that time non-negotiably to do it, and change your life truly.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I definitely have noticed a huge shift since I started doing meditation, which was like many years ago. But I definitely can see a huge change when I would, take like a few weeks off of the meditation versus if I'm constantly on track with it. It's a whole different experience. You react differently to things, you absorb things differently. It's very, very different. So I definitely also would highly recommend to implement meditation practice, whatever that is for people. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, as long as it's like an everyday thing that you can kind of set time for and practice. I think that would be, life changing, like you said, the game changer. And it's not that hard. It's a much simpler practice than people realize. And literally, it can be a huge change. That's Amazing. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you
I
where are you?
usually live on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. That's probably the best place. Or you can go to
Okay.
my website, Diana Londono, MD, like medicaldoctor.com. That's another place you can, look at my podcast articles, patient reviews, whatever you want to really learn about me, it's there. But LinkedIn is usually where I live. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about some urological, procedures and just explain it in like easy language in Spanish or English, how to go about like the most common urological procedures like biopsies, cystoscopies, and things like that so that you
What's
can
your
be
YouTube
informed.
channel?
It's
What's
just
your
my name,
YouTube
Diana
channel?
Londoño MD. Yeah, so it's there. It has some of my old kind of podcasts that I used to have, but there's also a lot of urological information you can check out there. So that's one place you can find information, English or Spanish, or again my website or LinkedIn. Reach out. I can literally talk about this all the time. I think this is really important for health, for wellness, for illness. Having gone through it myself, like you have, understanding we have so much power and we can lead a life with illness or wellness, depending on what we choose.
Yes, absolutely. No, I absolutely loved our conversation. And like I said, I think it's extremely important as well. And I would love to have you back in a few months again because we can definitely talk about this. I have so many different topics about these things, and I'm very, very passionate about it, like you said, because of the experiences I've had myself that are showing me that, wait a minute, it's not always as straightforward as they tell you, have your own judgment, have your own, like, connect your intuition, ask yourself, is this the only way, but definitely I want to take a few moments to acknowledge you and thank you for taking the time to share all the wisdom because it's amazing the way you understand life, the way you understand the body and the mind. I think it's very rare. Unfortunately, not all the medical professionals are open to, but they're getting there now, but not all of them are. So I want to acknowledge you for being an open-minded, a holistic individual that takes all things into account. I think it's very important what you are doing and how you are opening people's minds to, look at other possibilities. And I want to say a huge thank you for taking the time to explain the details to us. It's been incredible. And yeah, looking forward to doing this again for sure.
Thank you so much again for having me. And yeah, I hope people really just pay attention. Starts with awareness. That's the first step, and then yeah, again you decide. But thank you again for having me. It's been a pleasure, honor, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wait, let me